All right, welcome, everybody. Welcome to our WhyTry webinar. Really happy to have you all with us today. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Thanks to our panel, and really looking forward to our discussion today. My name's Jason Johnson. I'll kind of be the moderator of the webinar today. But we're going to be hearing quite a bit from Christian, and then we've also got a nice guest panelist today that we'll hear from as well. I'll formally introduce our panelists here momentarily. Before I introduce the subject, let me just give you an outline for what the expectation is for time and how you can interact on this today. So we're going to go for about an hour. We're scheduled to go for about an hour. These webinars are hosted by the WhyTry organization. We are a resilience organization that provides a toolkit and training around the skills and sources of resilience. We'll talk more specifically about that in a little bit more detail here shortly. But organizationally, we've been around for about 20 years and have been able to work throughout the country and throughout the world, helping people teach this critical topic or skill, I should say, of resilience. So the webinar is set to go for about an hour today. We are on a webinar link, which means the three of us as panelists are the only ones with live cameras and microphones. For the rest of you in attendance, we can't see you and we can't hear you, but we have a live chat going, and we'll keep the live chat active. So first thing that I want you to consider is within the chat, it's helpful if other people can see your comments. So there's one setting I just want everybody to double check on the chat. If you open up your chat box where you would type in a message, right above where you would type the message in the chat, it says to, and then there's a little drop-down menu where you can select who you're sharing your message with. That should say to everyone. If it says anything other than everyone, if it says to hosts and panelists, then not everybody's going to be able to see your comment. So go ahead and make that adjustment. After you've made that adjustment, let's just do a quick emoji check-in. Once you've made that adjustment, go ahead and type an emoji into the chat that expresses how you're feeling right now. We're a week before Thanksgiving, believe it or not. So for those in education, this is a wild last week before that Thanksgiving break. So hit us up with an emoji that shares how you feeling right now.
Oh, I'm seeing a lot of happiness.
A lot of happiness.
Man, that's a good mood. We haven't seen that much lately, Jason. That's next
Good
level.
happiness. We also got some good crazy eyes, which I can appreciate
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
I feel it all. I feel it all. Oh, I love it.
Very cool. Very
Great
cool.
job. Thank you, everybody. Oh, that's funny. All right. Well, perfect. And it looks like that's my quick way to make sure that everybody has adjusted their chat settings properly as well. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, that's
Um, as I mentioned, my name's Jason Johnson. Let me introduce our subject, and then I'll introduce our panelists, and then we'll get into it. Subject title for the webinar today is Breaking the Cycle, Teaching Resilience Where It's Needed Most. And I know we have a particularly high representation of people working in youth corrections and juvenile justice that are on with us today. Welcome you all. I think we're going to be presenting a model that's very, very useful within the field that you're in. And then I know we also have educators and mental health providers on here as well. So welcome to everybody. Really excited for the model we're going to dig into. My name's Jason Johnson. I'm the director of training for the WhyTry organization. Background is I worked as a school psychologist before coming to the WhyTry organization, got some research published on the topic of adolescent resilience. I'm joined by Christian Moore, one of the founders of the WhyTry organization, and I'm going to let him talk a little bit more momentarily to kind of introduce himself. But know that he's an LCSW social worker, the founder of the WhyTry organization, author, presenter, kind of does it all for us, and we're very fortunate to have him and his perspective at the helm here. And then we also have a guest panelist, Tim Brown out of Texas, who I think I'll more formally introduce a little bit later when I throw to Tim to share a little bit of his insight. But know that Tim brings several decades of experience working in juvenile justice and is a real expert on the topic we're going to be discussing today, but also has some unique insight of how that intersects with the WhyTry model of resilience. So, Tim, thank you so much for hopping on with us today as well.
You're welcome.
With that, let's go ahead and get started. Let's kick it off. Christian, I'm going to throw to you. I'll pull up some slides and let you kind of introduce yourself more formally and tell us a little bit more about your journey around resilience in this topic.
Yeah. We're the WhyTry organization because we want students and children across this country to be able to answer the question, why try? Why should they try? Why should they put effort into life? If they try, they'll have more opportunity, more freedom, more self-respect. We believe that's the answer to the question, why try? I'm the author of the book, The Resilience Breakthrough. My publisher just the other day told me we have over 150,000 copies in print there, and they're out of Austin, Greenleaf. So I never thought in a million years we'd have that many out there. The next picture here is a picture of me as a child. I grew up in between DC and Baltimore in the 70s and 80s. That's me in my Washington Commanders coat. We almost made it to the Super Bowl last year, but this year we're struggling a little bit. Tim there is a Dallas Cowboy fan, and so it's a little painful, but he's going to wake up soon. And both my parents had some pretty intense mental health issues. I was a special education student. I was illiterate when I was 17 years old, and basically I got the opportunity to go give a bunch of speeches because the opposite of success, usually a speaker speaks because of success. I attended the University of Adversity, and that's what really opened up the doors for me to go around the world and give some speeches. And I really didn't have any hope for leaving my neighborhood. It's interesting. My son has had a car since he was 16 years old, lives out here in the Rocky Mountains. My youngest son, Carson, said to me the other day, "Dad, you really thought you would never get out of your neighborhood?" And I'm like, nobody had a car. We didn't, every kid, 16-year-old didn't have a car. I literally thought I would not make it out of my neighborhood. So that's kind of my background. Next slide here. Go ahead, you can jump to the next one here. All right, there we go. So my interest in graduate school and stuff, I focused on resilience. I wanted to look at the impact that learning disabilities had on poverty and crime. And I came across a study, a 20-year longitudinal study in the Kauai resilience study. Two kids grew up in the same home, same neighborhood, the same background. One kid makes it out, the other kid doesn't make it. What's that X factor? And to be frank, I saw this in my own family. I have 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Some of us were able to make it out of our childhoods from the difficulties that we grew up with, and some didn't. And when I looked at the data on resilience, it just hit me, and I thought, all right, that's where I want my life's work to be. I want to really be able to teach the skills of resilience, which is WhyTry, but also where resilience comes from internally. So here's my life story. For years, I verbally told my life story, and one day a therapist friend of mine said, "Christian, you need to put this in a film so you don't have to live your trauma over and over and over again." So here's my journey of resilience. I grew up in between Baltimore and DC in a family of 12 kids, 5 brothers, 6 sisters. Both my parents had some mental health challenges. My mom had social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder, had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to go get food. So there was a lot of food to eat sometimes in my house growing up. Don't tell anyone, but my dad was one of the highest level code breakers at the National Security Agency. You could give my dad any mathematical problem and he could instantly rattle it off the top of his head. My dad was autistic. He was a genius, but he had very little common sense or social skills. If you've ever seen that movie, A Beautiful Mind, you've met my dad. So having 2 parents with some mental health challenges put me in a situation where I ended up being a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night, had very few rules, very few boundaries. One night, I was out late at night and a car pulls up and I hear a voice. And the voice I hear is the voice of a woman who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. It was one of my best friend's moms who sees me out there, late at night.
Christian had so many obstacles that was going on in his home.
She knows what I'm out there doing, and she says, look, don't you ever set foot on our property. I'm going to call the school tomorrow. I'm going to make sure you're not in any of Sean's classes. I remember thinking to myself, dang, I know I'm bad, but I'm not that bad. I can never go to school with him ever again.
When you see a child that's hungry, there's no happiness there. You're thinking about what other kids have that they don't have, okay? But when you see a child that's hungry and you give that child some food, you see that child's disposition change.
Yeah. Going to school was very difficult for me. As a child, I was diagnosed with ADHD, conduct disorder, and severe learning disabilities. When I was sitting in a classroom, oftentimes, I was embarrassed. When I got called out loud, I would act up and get in trouble instead of embarrassing myself because I didn't know how to read or didn't know how to do basic math. So, for me, it was like going to the doctor's office every day, going to school. I had a hard time telling time. When I was even 17 years old, I couldn't tell time on a hand clock. To me, 4:45 equals 25 minutes to 5, but they tell me a quarter's 15. But how could a quarter not equal 25?
When we concentrate on that more to make sure that a child's needs are provided for, then that child will thrive. I know that I'm loved, and I know that this person is going to feed me to make sure I have what I need.
Mama Jackson took over.
One of his teachers in high school said to him that he would never go to college. Christian went to college.
Growing up in between DC and Baltimore, I saw many social problems in my community, in my neighborhood. I saw poverty. I saw hopelessness at times. I even saw some violence. But I remember walking to school one morning and literally seeing one of my best friends evicted from his house. His furniture was all throughout his front yard. I could see the heartbreak in his eyes, his parents' eyes. And I knew in that moment, I wanted to be a social worker. And I knew I could not become a social worker unless I went to college. But I was told college was probably not going to be an option for me with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading and writing level. Statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA and becoming LeBron James.
His experience was at the other side of the track. Life was different. Life was unique. And the kids like that, they have to survive.
I struggled getting through college math. College math is a requirement to make it through school. I remember that feeling in my stomach when I knew I couldn't graduate.
They're not going to let me graduate because I can't do math. I can't count money. I can't numbers. I get confused and all of these things. He was like a bobcat in a cage.
So I came up with something called the No F game plan. And this was a strategy that I used to make it through school with my learning differences.
He made himself big. He made himself known to others. I'm here. Hey, I may not have what you have, but I have a street smart.
I would go to every class. I would sit on the front row. I would do all the homework assignments. And I would do enough extra credit to get a D-. I would shoot for A's, but I learned in college you get just as much credit with a D-.
And his paper is not polished. Other students get an A. Christian gets B, sometimes a C. But he has ideas. He has a substance. And the WhyTry program that he ran with and helped incredible number of students and the teachers and administrators came out of a classwork.
He created an environment to teach teachers how to really deal with students that may have significant functional limitations.
I persevered. Luckily, I knew what resilience was. I knew how to take my academic challenges and use them as a reason to knock down barriers, to focus on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me.
The vision of WhyTry, and I think this thing is called the roller coaster ride. And I'm so glad that when he fell off of that roller coaster, that he got back on.
Dr. Virgil Wood, civil rights icon and close friend to Dr. Martin Luther King, learned about WhyTry's impact and decided to honor Mama Jackson with the National Rosa Parks Save the Children Award. Mama Jackson gave me a safe and loving environment so I could thrive. She didn't get rid of my problems at home, at school, in my neighborhood. She showed me how to use those problems as a fuel source to put one foot in front of another and create a productive outcome with the opposition. Despite my many challenges, I was able to get a master's degree with a 6th grade math level and a 7th grade reading and writing level, and become a licensed clinical social worker. As a school social worker, I quickly noticed it was very difficult to engage students like myself, especially students coming to school with no paper, no pencil, no notebook, totally disengaged from the academic process. I noticed doing verbal cognitive intervention didn't reach many of these students. One day my colleague pointed out to me that most of the students I'm working with are visual learners, not auditory learners. So I thought to myself, wait a minute, I'm an artist. Why would I not take everything and make it visual for the student? Most of these kids are visual learners. So I decided to take evidence-based mental health practice and deliver it in visual metaphors. And I noticed once I did it in a visual metaphor, the student locked in on the visual picture. It kept them engaged. They were far more interested in what I was doing. I knew I had the student in that moment. Using visual metaphors to teach things like your decisions have consequences, how to tear off your labels, how to understand your emotions and the emotions of others. And what was really exciting to me is sometimes 2 or 3 weeks later, they could remember the details of what we did a few weeks before in counseling. And that's when I knew we had that engagement. Then we decided to reinforce the picture with music and physical activities to increase that engagement even more. We took brief solution-focused therapy, reality therapy, strength-based counseling, and combined it into a learning method that any educator or counselor could use to reach students, especially students that are having a hard time answering the question, why try? All right. Well, as you can see, I had some amazing mentors, amazing people come into my life. You know, this guy, Dr. Mike Seipel, he's at a Cornell University. Incredible people. Mama Jackson, had she not showed up, I wouldn't be here talking to you guys right now. So very, very blessed to have her in my life. And, it was amazing. She did really just focus on what was right with me, not what was wrong with me. She'd always say to me, when you end up on death row, the only person that's going to visit you is me. I'm like, death row? Holy cow, I'm not that bad. But she wanted me to know I couldn't mess up. There was not going to be judgment from her. I don't have to carry guilt and shame, that there's no matter what I did, she's going to show up. She's continued to be that way all the way to today. No matter what, she just keeps reaching out. She reached out to me this week twice already. And so she's always there. So anyways, I started realizing most of these kids are visual learners. So I started trying to take everything in mental health, drawing pictures, and I'm an artist. My business partner, Hans, is an artist. We literally started just using the arts to try to really communicate to these students. And then we started teaching some skills of resilience. One of the first skills that I started to teach was the reality ride. And you heard Mama Jackson allude to this. This just talks about the ups and downs of life. Anybody who's been on this earth for more than 15 years knows life is a roller coaster. The roller coaster starts out, it goes uphill. That represents their uphill challenges at home, at school, with peers. At the top of the hill, I'll talk to them about things that are getting them in trouble. It could be using drugs, stealing, fighting, running away, talking during class, anything, hurting themselves, hurting other people. I'll say, when you go up, you do those things. Oftentimes we have a rush and then reality kicks in. So I'll say, what's the definition of reality? They've usually already given me the definition. And they'll say, reality is what's real. Reality is what's going down. And I'll say, what's the reality of skipping school? The crashes. I have to go to in-school suspension. I had to repeat the ninth grade. What's the reality of fighting? I got suspended. The loop represents the problems they keep doing over and over. And I'll say, you're in the loop if you feel frustrated, you feel confused, you feel angry, you feel scared. I'll say, my job is to help get you out of that loop right there and get you on that track to opportunity, freedom, self-respect. And so at the end of the hour, I'll say to the student, what does that picture teach? As long as they can explain that back to me, I look at that as being successful. This next one here, to get on that track to opportunity, freedom, self-respect, we want them to be able to tear off their labels. And Jason, you want to talk about tearing off labels there?
Yeah, happy to do it. Just to reiterate, so this model, this approach to resilience, what we've done is we've taken resilience and we've broken it down into 10 kind of core skills or ingredients towards resilience. And we know that there's more than 10 skills of resilience, but we've broken it down to kind of a foundational or a base 10 skills of resilience. And then each skill of resilience, we have a set of visual metaphors, like Christian described, that are designed to help lead a discussion with your students. You can do this in individual settings, group settings, but the idea with a visual metaphor is it becomes a really nice space for individuals to see themselves within that discussion. So, for example, the discussion Christian highlighted, when you're talking about this picture of the roller coaster, we're imagining what life is like on that roller coaster and what it takes to get on the or the harder but worth it track. When it comes to labels, this one's all about trying to empower students to help develop a more positive sense of self. And we do it through kind of two main ingredients. We want to empower students to tear off negative labels that they may have. We have the cans here as the visual metaphor to represent this process. Those cans on the bottom row, they have labels that grown-ups have given to young people over the years that are kind of negative labels that maybe highlight a negative behavior or a negative incident or a negative pattern. And so you have things like learning disability, troublemaker, attitude problem, liar, thief, delinquent, etc. And those are just one set of labels. We know there are a whole bunch of other negative labels that get attached to people as well. And we're finding that young people have negative labels attached to them now as early as kindergarten and first grade. And those negative labels really destroy a person's hope. They make it much more hopeless for them. And they make it so people start to put limits on themselves and start to see each other differently in an unhealthy way as well. So we want to empower students to tear off negative labels. And then that can on the top, where the label's being torn off, you can see underneath the label is a thing we describe as the real me. And the real me is this representation of what's good about each individual, what they might like about themselves, what we like about them, their strengths, their goals, their dreams. And we really want to help students get to a positive place on that. Now, a lot of our kiddos may not have real healthy internal dialogues early on. We may have to help script that and kind of reprogram that a little bit. And we have resources that assist with that. But the model here is we take a visual metaphor, we connect it to a key concept or a key skill of resilience, and then we try to make the interaction engaging. We use videos, we use processing questions, we use lots of activities, and we do that to start teaching these foundational skills of resilience in an interactive way. And it becomes this really effective model when we combine it with a focus on relationships and connection. It becomes a really effective model to start to increase resilience for these students. And this has really dramatic implications. It impacts academics, it impacts relationships, it impacts preparation for the next phase of life, whether it's an elementary student prepping for middle school prepping for high school, or ultimately all of our young people are preparing to enter the grown-up world where resilience, we know, is really critical. And so these skills have a real transformational effect as they kind of change students' relationship to their challenges. And I know we have quite a few on here from youth corrections and juvenile justice. This has been a particularly effective model in those spaces, as a lot of the kiddos that come into those areas have a real deficit sometimes in some of those specific skills of resilience. So when we can take an interactive skills-based approach, it becomes a really nice model for teaching resilience. Just to give you kind of the answer key, we're not going to go through all of these, but just to give you kind of the answer key of what our list of skills of resilience are. And keep in mind, each one of these has a collection of visual metaphors that go along with them. We'll show you some highlight ones here in a minute, but here's our list of the skills of resilience that we specifically focus on. And for anybody that works with young people, I think this is a very effective approach. If you can break your concept of resilience down to specific skills, here's our approach, and you're welcome to use these. Somebody asked if this will be shared later. Michelle, we are recording this. Well, we can sync up and make sure you get the recording. So here's our skills of resilience: decision-making and consequences. Do I recognize that decisions have consequences? That was the roller coaster one Christian mentioned. Positive self-image, that's tearing off our labels, right? Emotional regulation. Raise your virtual hand if you currently work with students that struggle controlling their defense mechanisms in pressure situations. I think I'm seeing all the hands go up. This is a huge one. This has lifetime implications, right? Motivation and a resilient mindset. Can I help somebody stay motivated when things get difficult? And can I help somebody view their challenges differently as fuel towards productive outcomes? Resilient people still have challenges. They just typically tend to view them differently. So part of what we're doing when we teach the skills of resilience is teaching a model to help our students change their perspective towards how they view their challenges. Peer influence and positive relationships. Can I connect in a positive way to other humans that have a positive influence on myself? This is a great place to explore the impacts and the risk of negative friend groups and negative peer pressure. Problem solving. Resilient individuals are typically good problem solvers. Hard work and determination. Can I put sustained effort into something and see it through to completion? We have a real challenge with that one right now. That's a lot of students are deficient in that area. Responsibility and self-discipline. Raise your virtual hand if you currently work with students who struggle following the rules, laws, or guidelines of a classroom or society or community. Again, I'm seeing all the hands go up. This is a big one, but part of being resilient is building discipline. And one of the best ways to build discipline is to learn to follow whatever set of rules, guidelines, or expectations exist around us. Support systems and relationship building, how we connect to positive systems of support. And then the last one is future-ready vision and self-efficacy. And that involves helping our kiddos see opportunity within their future. A lot of them have a very limited vision. And then self-efficacy is kind of a clinical term that describes a belief or a confidence that you can influence your outcomes. And so as we start to develop resilience, we start to increase our belief that we can actually influence our outcomes. And that gives us a whole new ability to put effort into things that we may not have previously put effort into. So this is kind of the master list that we're focusing on. Then just to give you a quick overview, Chris, I'm going to go through these and speak up if you have any insight on any of these as I go through them, or if you want me to speak on any of them as well. But defense mechanisms. So here's some of the visual metaphors. This goes along with emotional regulation. We've got the motivation formula. This connects to our ability to channel challenges towards productivity. This also teaches some specific strategies designed to help us not give up when things get difficult. It's got a theme of water going through a series of dams. Sometimes I'll preface this one by asking the question, and I can ask it to you all: is water a good thing or a bad thing? Water's kind of the theme here. You can respond in the chat. Quick opinion poll: is water a good thing or a bad thing? And I'm modeling for you now how we can use like engaging questions or processing questions. Did I stump you all with the water question? See, this was what I was waiting for. It kind of depends, right? If the water is coming in a flood situation, or if we're not expecting it, water can be really problematic. It's got tremendous energy potential. But the flip side is water gives life, facilitates growth, can generate power. So the symbolism here is water represents challenges. So I'll then pivot over and ask the same question. Are challenges a good thing or a bad thing? And the answer again is it kind of depends, right? We know that certain challenges can have a detrimental impact, or if we get overwhelmed with challenges, they can really negatively impact us. But we also know that challenges facilitate growth. They make us who we are. They influence our perspective. So this one's all about trying to help adjust our perspective towards challenges in life and then learn some strategies to not give up when things get difficult. It's a really powerful model. Got climbing out here. We got the crabs. This one's kind of an homage to the Christian's home state of Maryland. Christian, do you want to speak on the crabs a little bit, what the concept we're teaching here?
Yeah. This deals with peer support, peer pressure and stuff. We know positive peer pressure is the greatest thing in the world. Negative peer pressure, every parent knows, is a nightmare. So I'll say, look, if you put a bunch of live crabs in a pot, if you don't put a lid on the pot, why can't the crabs get out of the pot? And the kids will say, well, duh, the other crabs are reaching up and pulling them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're doing drugs with, gang banging, stealing, fighting, running away, all they're doing is they're pulling you down. They're keeping you in that pot. Misery loves company. All the questions you ask the students written right there, what are the reasons for staying in the pot? If I'm in a gang, it gives me protection. It gives me money. It gives me prestige. It acts as a surrogate family. So once kids know, you understand maybe why they're in that pot, that's another powerful relationship way to connect with them from a relationship standpoint. At the bottom there, warning: if you try to get out of this pot, you will be attacked. I don't know about you guys, but the more good I try to do in this world, the more you're going to be attacked sometimes. Now, if you blink twice, this is my magic trick, Jason. I have a real magic trick here. If you blink twice, instead of the crabs pulling each other into the pot, they could also be pushing each other out of that pot. And again, positive peer support is one of the most powerful things in the world.
I love it. This was the visual metaphor where I had my biggest aha moment on the power of a visual approach combined with specific skills of resilience. I had a 16-year-old I was working with that had started to fall into some rough friend groups. I could kind of see the writing on the wall, and I had never presented this picture to him, but we had gone through some other WhyTry material before. But I brought him into my office, put up the picture, and I swear this is how it worked. I put up the picture of these crabs in the pot. I didn't have any of the questions up. It was just the picture. And I said, hey, we need to have an important conversation. I think this picture kind of highlights what I want to talk to you about. Tell me what you see. And I kid you not, this 15-year-old looked at it for about 20 seconds, and then he looked back at me and he said, that's me and my friends, isn't it? And I said, well, it's your story. You tell me. And he literally proceeded to teach the concept to me just by looking at the visual image. And then I was able to pull out the specific skill of resilience we wanted to talk about, which is positive connection, positive support, and positive individuals. But that was my big aha moment on the power of visual metaphors, was specifically in this one when it comes to leading discussions with young people. Jumping hurdles, this one's part of problem solving that I referred back to. Desire, time, and effort. We got an image of a maze here, a very busy image of a maze. This one's part of the hard work and determination. What does it take to complete this? You might have to backtrack a little bit. You don't want to give up partway through. There's lots of different ways you can process that. This is a fun one. Lift the weight. We connect this one to that idea I referenced of following the rules, laws, and guidelines of society to build discipline. This weightlifter, if you look close, he's got kind of an interesting physique. Half of his body is muscular. That's the half that's lifting the weight. And then the half of his body that's lifting the balloon, he's got no muscle on his arm or leg. And that muscle represents the discipline that's developed as we learn to follow rules, laws, guidelines. The weight represents what's expected of us, and that balloon represents things that get us in trouble or things that make us weak. And so each one of these provides a backdrop to lead a discussion and then connect back to a key concept. We have about 40 visual metaphors now. We've got a power strip to represent plugging into positive systems of support. And then we have this image of the wall that kind of brings everything together, that represents this shift in perspective we want our students to experience, where you see the student on the ground level with the limited vision of the wall in front of him. And if we apply those skills of resilience, that student on top of the wall represents the shift in perspective, where the student on top of the wall still has challenges. The wall's still there, but that student on top can actually see opportunity, freedom, and self-respect in his field of vision. That's that future-ready vision and self-efficacy. So really, really fun ways. Christian, maybe before I throw over to Tim, maybe talk a little bit more on this concept of visual metaphors and using those to teach the skills of resilience.
Yeah. First couple of years, I was a social worker. At the end of the hour, I'd say, what do we do today? And again, they would pretty much tell me what I wanted to hear. But by having it visual, even 6 years later, I run into kids and they can explain it back to me. The other thing is, when I'm even walking to a mall or something, kids will look at me, they'll recognize me from, working with them even years ago, and they'll be, Mr. Moore. And they'll go like this. I know they're crashing on the reality ride. If they go like this, I know they're in the loop. So it becomes a language that, it's its own language over time. But yeah, it's just retention. And I think being someone like me with severe learning disabilities, complexity is really difficult for me. So when I understand a concept, I guess my contribution to mental health was that I was able to take kind of really complex things and make them very simple for kids. And I think we make things way, way too complicated. And I think it's interesting, this program is actually taught K through death row. I always like to say, from the playpen to the state pen. We just trained, Hans, my business partner, was just in Colorado about a week and a half ago, training a bunch of the correction staff and the inmates to deliver this program and our resilience work as well. And so, this is literally taught K through death row. Go ahead, Jason.
I love it. Great overview. And I think it's great insight into what we've been able to do with this. We've been able to use this approach in, just like Christian said, across all age groups, pre-K, elementary, secondary, post-secondary. We've also used it in very specific kind of higher needs areas as well. Corrections, adult corrections, youth corrections, juvenile justice. We get used in mental health facilities, after school programming. A lot of intervention work has built us in, and there's a ton of flexibility when you take this approach. Just the simplicity of boiling it down to skills and visual metaphors grants it a lot of flexibility within the approach. So we're honored today to have kind of a unique expert in the field in Tim Brown, and I want to make sure we have time to hear from Tim a little bit. So let me give Tim a proper introduction, and then Tim, I'm going to throw to you to share a little bit about your experience here. So Tim brings over 35 years of experience working with youth in juvenile justice and behavior settings, has worked in Texas and also, I believe, Colorado. Do I have that right? I hope so. You can correct me if I missed it. But he's been a licensed child care administrator in Texas, got major experiences, including some really cool work along equestrian therapy, outdoor experiential therapy, and programs, and then the development of behavior modification programs for juveniles as well. So he's a real expert in the field, but he's also been a longtime user of the WhyTry approach. So what I was hoping that you could maybe share with us a little bit today, Tim, and you've got plenty of time to share, but maybe share some of your thoughts on how we've described. I know this is probably kind of a fun full circle moment for you to see us kind of reset the table on these skills of resilience and give you the opportunity to think back about how you've taken this approach and applied it within your field for the years that you've used it. Wondering if you could just talk a little bit about what this approach has meant to you and maybe share a little bit about what some of the skills you've used WhyTry to teach have been.
Thank you for having me on today. And first off, I want to thank everybody that's joined up today, because you guys are the soldiers. You guys are the people that are trying to help youth out. You guys are the ones that are really dedicating your lives to helping the young people out in this world. And that is more than a noble effort. And I want to just personally thank you. Having said that, I want to give just a little bit of background about how I was introduced to the WhyTry program, because it was in the middle of my career that I first found out and learned about the WhyTry program. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself. I went to the University of Texas. I graduated a million years ago in 1979 with a degree in psychology with an emphasis on child development. And I have a master's degree from Texas State University in education, but with an emphasis on counseling and guidance. So that's kind of my formal background training. I started off when I got out of school, people often said, "What are you going to do with a psychology degree?" And I would think for a second, and I meant this from my heart. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to help change the world. I want to try to do something positive. And so that was kind of the basis of my background. I started off working in a therapeutic wilderness camp, which was the first therapeutic wilderness camp in America, developed by Campbell Loftmiller, and it was called the Salesmanship Club. And I did that for a year. So for a year, I lived outdoors with a group of young people and talk about challenges every day, living outside. And from there, I went to work at a boys ranch in Dripping Springs, Texas, called Darden Hill Ranch School. And I worked there for 9 years as a direct care worker. And while I was there, I met a gentleman named Robert Ellis, who was an inspiration to me. He worked alongside me. We were, quote, just two direct care staff. And we decided to open our own program up. We were told that direct care staff really aren't able to do these kind of things. And so we just said, well, you don't know us, and you don't know where we're coming from. And we used to kind of joke around with people and say, we're like the Blues Brothers. We're on a mission from God. And we started Pegasus School, which some of you may have heard of. We founded it in 1990, and it is still alive and well today in Lockhart, Texas. And it's primarily a residential treatment center for adjudicated juveniles. And that's where the majority of my experience and introduction to WhyTry began. Well, we started Pegasus in 1990. Well, I didn't learn about WhyTry till around 2000 when I went to a conference and I was able to meet Christian. Within 30 minutes of listening to this man, knowing that he too was on a mission, literally, that this WhyTry program was the program that I wanted to use in my therapeutic setting working with juveniles. And so during the time at Pegasus, we primarily worked with adjudicated juvenile sex offenders. Not the easiest group of young people to work with, young men. I worked with boys only. We worked with over 80 counties in the state of Texas. And in those 80 counties, all of them, including the judges, learned about the WhyTry program. we were the primary inpatient treatment program, juvenile sex offender treatment program for Dallas County Juvenile. My campus, I had 145 full-time staff members, and I had 175 young men. At any point in time, I had over 50 young men from Dallas County alone. So we were their treatment program of choice. Well, once I was introduced to WhyTry, I very quickly learned that I've always had a core belief of that you learn more by doing, and that improving a young person's self-esteem was probably one of the most important things to help them change their attitudes, their life, and their behaviors. And so what we ended up doing is, in the beginning, we used WhyTry in our therapy groups. We had very experienced therapists. Most of them were trained to become licensed sex offender treatment providers. We also had a situation where the different therapists would use WhyTry as kind of an adjunct therapy to their traditional kind of sit-down therapy. These guys that showed you, Jason and Christian, showing you these metaphors, these posters, well, let me tell you how we used them. We put them up inside every one of our dorms. When you have 175 boys, you don't have them all in one place, or you're going to definitely be fighting a losing battle every day. So we had dormitories that were developed by what phase of the program they were in treatment. So we had a beginning and an end to the program with physical moves throughout the campus. We had a 125-acre campus. And so our dormitories typically had 24 youth in them. And we had all these WhyTry metaphors all over the walls of their dorm. Every single young man who came into Pegasus learned about the WhyTry program. Now, I'm going to tell you that 20 years ago, the WhyTry program was pretty basic compared to what it is today. But even the basic level of the WhyTry program in those days, I saw unbelievable changes in young people that previously I had never experienced. When we would go before the judge, we always told the young person, the young man, that we'd be their biggest advocate, that if they did well and tried to make the changes, we would go to bat for them no matter what, that we were in their corner. And so what ended up happening is, these kids who typically would go in front of a judge and yes, sir, no, sir, very minimal answers. I encourage the judges to start asking them open-ended questions like, what have you learned at Pegasus, and why do you feel like you're ready to come back into society? Typically, these kids were with us anywhere from about 9 months to about 2 years, which is a great commitment by county for treatment of a young person financially, if nothing else. So these kids would get in front of the judge, and the next thing you know, this 13, 14-year-old kid is telling them about the reality ride, about defense mechanisms, about climbing out of the pot. And so we then began to work with different counties and even train some of the judges on the basics of the WhyTry program. And what we saw, I'll kind of keep this short because I literally could talk to you for a long, long time, more than we have allotted for today. But one of the main changes, and it was alluded to earlier, is that it's like a common language. And this was my experience. In a treatment center, when a young person goes to the therapist in their group, an individual therapy, it's not secretive. I don't want to say it's secretive because it's not. But oftentimes programs are very disjointed. And that is a recipe for lack of progress. And so what we decided to do is we trained all of our staff members, all of our direct care staff members. We also had an on-campus school through the University of Texas at Austin. charter school. We trained the teachers on the WhyTry program. We put the posters up in the classrooms with the teachers. And so what it developed was when a young person would go, when these residents would go into treatment, go into therapy, several hours a week, they could come out and speak this WhyTry language to the staff who understood it. They could speak this language to teachers who understood it. They could speak this language to their probation officer. We had many probation officers trained in WhyTry because of the success we had at Pegasus School. As a matter of fact, my introduction to WhyTry was from a probation officer from Georgetown, Texas, Williamson County Juvenile Probation. So I actually learned about WhyTry because this probation officer had a young person at Pegasus, had a young man at Pegasus. And so what we decided to do was it was able for us to create a common language. And I'm going to tell you a very quick story about a young man. This is similar to what Christian was talking about. We had the metaphors up. As a matter of fact, Christian was at our facility training our staff. And we were cleaning up in our training room. And young people came in and helped sweep up. And, they also ate some of the leftover cookies and things that we had for the training. And this young man was looking at a picture of the reality ride that was just a picture. It had no words on it or anything. And the young man came up to me and he said, "Mr. Brown, what did y'all doing here today?" And I said, "Well, we got training." I introduced him to Christian and, they shook hands and the kid was just sort of looked at that poster for about 30 seconds. And I said, "What do you think about that?" And he'd only been at Pegasus about 3 months. So he was not somebody who had been, treatment wise, had all these therapy and all these different things. The young man looked at the poster and said, "Sir, that's the offender cycle. That reality ride where it shows the loop, that's us when we're in our offender cycle." Some people call it a behavioral cycle. But in juvenile justice, we looked at it as what we called an offender cycle. Right then, I looked at Christian and I thought to myself, if this young person who is very new to and this kid was like 11 or 12, he looked at that poster and he said, "Sir, that's the offender cycle that you guys have been teaching me about and my ups and downs and how I respond to things." And to be honest, my jaw kind of hit the floor. I thought, oh my gosh. And so one of the experiences that we had was much like what Christian and Jason have been talking about. Young people that we worked with would come back to our facility. Sometimes I worked in it long enough for 10, 20, 30 years that I had kids that were 15 who came back to see us when they were 35 years old. And they still understood the WhyTry metaphors. They still talked about them. They said, "Sir, you wouldn't believe it, but when I got out of Pegasus, man, I slipped right back into that reality ride offender cycle." And they would talk about these different things. And then I knew the power that this program has. And so what the main thing is it created the common language. And so I even had some of our maintenance men on the campus learn the WhyTry program. So if they had a youth that they were working with, they could literally say something to them like, "Hey, it seems like you're trying to drag a bunch of guys back down into your pot again. What are you doing? You're sure being negative, And the kids understood exactly what they were talking about. And so I really think that besides the therapeutic shared language, it's just a powerful program. Christian has a very powerful story. And I was lucky enough, and Christian may not remember this, but one of his very first topics on teaching resilience was at my school. I do have it on DVD and would be glad to share it with you anytime. But one thing that Christian said to these kids that blew their mind, these were our older guys. They were in the last phase of the program. Many of them were going to be returning back to their communities. And when Christian came in, he made a very simple statement to them that just literally floored everybody. And the statement was, he goes, sometimes guys, you really have an advantage over a lot of people because look at all the things you've had to overcome. Look at all the deficiencies, the negative labels, all the different kind of issues like this. You guys really have an advantage over these young people who are, college bound, have really never had many difficulties in life, often come from not necessarily just wealthy families, but not the kind of background that, because most of the kids that I worked with were victims of abuse, lived in very negative households, very poor parenting role models. And when Christian came in and said, you guys actually have an advantage over those guys, because when those guys come up against the kind of things that you have had to come up against, most of them are going to crumble. Most of them are going to crumble, not all of them, but look at the negative things that have happened in your life, and let's look at how we can turn them into a positive. Let's look at how we can turn this into a situation where you will be able to make better decisions. Because what I found, and I'm going to kind of close with this, what I found with the kids that I worked with, that the kind of kid that I wanted to deal with at Pegasus was the kid that nobody wanted to deal with. They had maybe had placements before, failed placements. Some of them had been in foster care. Some of them had been tried in many diversion programs. And most of them, we were sort of the last stop for many of these kids. And considering that they had sexual offender issues, many of them carried an indeterminate sentence of up to 40 years in prison. These kids, they knew the seriousness of what they had done, and it was their job to change. And I'm going to tell you right now, the WhyTry program, the only thing I'm upset with Christian about is that he didn't develop it 10 years earlier so that I could have started using it in 1990 instead of in year 2001. Because once we started using the WhyTry program, we were always successful. We had you don't grow from a small fledgling treatment center with 5 staff and 5 kids to a nationally known treatment center with 145 staff, 175 youth on any given day. You have to have success to get to that point. It's a results-oriented situation when you work with juveniles. Often you have a very short time to work with them. And so what I'm here today and so proud to be a part of back when I was doing this work, the WhyTry program, because once we started using the WhyTry program, our success rate went to over 90%. Yeah. There are not many treatment programs that can say they have a 90%. We had about a 97% completion of program. But when I say success, I'm talking to the judge because he would say, well, Tim, what's your definition of success? I said, well, Judge, you sent us a young person here. We work with them for about a year. We get them ready to maybe return back to a lesser restrictive setting or back to their families. And my definition of success is you don't see them again. They're not, because in juvenile probation, many of these young people going through the courtroom is like going through swinging doors. They're in, they're out, they're in, they're out, they're in, they're out. And so we were one of the first programs. I think we were the first program, but I'm not positive about that. But I saw it because when I was first introduced to WhyTry, it was primarily for at-risk youth in a public school setting. And they were being used all over Utah, and it was very impressive. And when I met Christian, I went through the WhyTry training. I literally looked at him and said, man, this is geared specifically for the kind of kids who are in juvenile probation. And we were one of the first programs to use it. It helped all of our kids out. It helped our staff out. And mostly we all had it. So, it wasn't like a young person goes to therapy and nobody knows what they're working on. these kids were so engaged, they were beginning to go, when is our next WhyTry class? When are we going to do those? Because what they really love to do, we had to have, it was a requirement in the state of Texas that we had to have 1 hour of therapeutic recreation every day. And so a lot of my staff that were trained in WhyTry used the WhyTry activities as therapeutic recreation. And then they could tie it right back into their therapy. So we weren't just going out to the basketball court and shooting baskets and throwing a football around. We were actually doing therapy during recreation time that tied into all their therapies. And so I do want to thank all of you that have joined up today. I want to turn it back over to Jason. And I just want to say how much of an honor it's been to have used the WhyTry program. And I encourage all of you to go to future trainings. WhyTry, I mean, these guys are all over the place. And they will, what I found is when I told Christian I wanted to use this program, he said, Tim, you tell us what you need and we will do everything in our power to back you up and help you out. And it became such a point that literally almost all of juvenile probation in the state of Texas knows what the WhyTry program is and the value of it. I just want to thank y'all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim. That's powerful. Christian, I want to give you the chance to respond, even though we're right up on time. Also, Christian, want to verify if you have any plans on going back in a time machine and getting this program to Tim 10 years earlier.
Yeah. Man, I wish I could have got it to you 10 years earlier for sure. But I mean, I give credit. Tim's being very humble. I was there on his campus several times and I saw how he was respected, how the kids responded to him. The kids loved him. The staff respected him. A lot of that success came from the work he did. And we all know, to be successful, you have to have three things. First thing you got to have is that relationship. You got to make sure what you're doing is relevant. And Tim really made sure what they were doing was relevant to that population, especially with sex offenders and stuff. That's a hard population to treat. And your success with that is unbelievable. And then the third thing is resilience, that relationship, relevancy, and resilience. And Tim brought all three of those together. Tim also, I've had the opportunity to go on road trips with him, spend some time with him. And, he also has been a mentor, feeling a little emotion here, but he's been a mentor to me. He's someone I know at any moment I could pick up the phone and call and he would be there. I don't get the opportunity because of how crazy busy I am to connect with him much these days, but he's someone who's an amazing person. I promise I did not pay him for that. But he believed in me early in my career, really early in my career. I've gone 7 million miles now, probably when I just gone a couple 100,000 miles traveling. He helped me know, you have to have a mentor paint a picture of your potential. I think what he did with a lot of those kids at Pegasus is he helped them see who they really were. And, all humans are special. What's amazing about Tim is his ability to see who a person really is. And he did that for me. He did that for thousands of kids. He's definitely one of my heroes. Go ahead, Jason.
Awesome. I want to share two quick things and we'll wrap up. First thing I want to make sure everybody has, I'm going to give you kind of our simplified cheat sheet for the WhyTry approach. We've talked kind of big picture philosophy of resilience, and we talked skills of resilience. In its simplest form, if you're trying to replicate the model, and obviously in training we go into detail on this, but if you're trying to pull some key ingredients, here's the approach we try to help people when they deliver resilience. Number one, you start with a picture. A visual approach is a very powerful teaching model. Number two, you have to know your key concept, and then you connect the dots between your picture and your key concept. And then number three, you make it engaging, activities, media, etc. That simple formula is really the basis of everything that we deliver. And our best practitioners, our best facilitators understand this simple formula. The next thing I want to share with you is we want to give you something for attending today. We've got a resilience bundle. I'm going to put up a QR code here. We've got a resilience bundle that we want to get you access to, kind of as a thank you for the work that you're doing and for showing up here today. I'm going to put up this QR code. This resilience bundle, it will include some really useful resources. It includes a parent guide to resilience, which is a really, really useful free resource you can share with parents. I know that's one of the big connection pieces we're really trying to help out with. And we've got some pretty exciting stuff on the horizon for some future parent support resources. But this will get you access to our current parent guide to resilience. It'll get you some free WhyTry resources, including at least one visual metaphor and processing guide with it. It'll give you a nice kind of starting point to dip your toe in the water a little bit of this model. And then we'd love to establish a dialogue with you as well. So if we can be of any assistance towards professional development or any other resources, we'd love to help out. Huge thank you to our panelists. Christian, Tim, thank you so much for showing up and for bringing great ideas and great experience and being generous with sharing that. And huge thank you to our attendees that showed up and participated. I recognize some of the names on here. It's fun to see some of the names.
Yeah, I got some legends on there.
I looking through them all. It's just incredible people that we feel so fortunate to interact. And then I love seeing new names as well, and really hope we'll get the opportunity to collaborate. Let us know what we can do to support you. Let us know what we can do to help. We really want this to feel like a collaborative, constant collaboration towards trying to help students be more resilient. Thank you so much, everybody.
Hey, Jason, I'm going to throw in one thing real fast.
Please.
Kind of an opportunity. Things slowed down for me during the holidays. I stopped traveling until January. So if anybody wants a free webinar on resilience, I'm paid anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 for this. So this is literally about an $8,000 donation. Please take advantage of this. I will do a workshop on resilience on my book, The Resilience Breakthrough. If you can get some of your key staff together. I know many of you are probably thinking, I wish this person could have heard this. I wish that person would have been here today. I'll be really frank with you. We don't get a lot of rejection once people see our methodology, what we're doing. And so if you want me to do a workshop on resilience, if you're in a correction facility, I'm going to throw in something. I haven't even talked to Tim about this, but if you give me a little notice, if you're in a correction facility, I'll come to just in a webinar, I'll do a workshop, and I can probably talk Tim into maybe popping in on 1 to 3 of those with me. I'm not going to commit him more than 3, but I'm sure he would probably do 3 of those with me. If you want to have the combo of me and Tim, let me know. The other thing is you have Jason Johnson here. He's being very humble. Jason has gotten this program. Literally, he's trained tens of thousands of people in this program, which has impacted millions of kids. He was a school psychologist in education. If you want to access him as a consultant during the holidays, you can access Jason, and Jason will put his contact information up there. You can get a hold of Jason if you have any questions, and then he'll link you to a guy named Mike that is our coordinator, Mike Yancey, that coordinates everything we do and helps get the program to you directly. And so Jason will get you there's his contact information there, and you can access Jason as a consultant. He is a major educational consultant, and I don't usually, the only reason I'm willing to do this is it's during the holidays. He might have a little bit of time too, because everything slows down, in the next couple of weeks. So again, you can have access to Jason. We can do a webinar with you. Jason can connect you with the person that coordinates everything in your state as well. And if you want me and Tim Brown to do a workshop, if you're in corrections, let us know. If my workability people are still out there, we have tons of resources that we did not have in the beginning of workability that I want workability to know about. And so please get a hold of us if you're with workability. And anyways,
yeah, for sure,
you guys.
And if you do want to take advantage of that opportunity for a virtual resilience workshop, email me as well, jason@whytry.org. Michelle, I know that's kind of a big lofty ask, but we could potentially work something out. If you can help coordinate, start a dialogue with us. And we've done virtual events before where we've been able to at least kind of lead out getting the message on resilience out to areas. So we'd love to get a dialogue going around that as well. Hey, huge thank you to everybody. This is the exciting time of year in education. So catch your breath, get ready for the wild ups and downs of the holidays. Thank you all for doing what you're doing, for showing up today. I'm going to play us out with a little bit of music. Thanks, everybody.